Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You're always most welcome. Slightly strange intro from me today, which reflects my mood, I'm afraid. Not sure where to begin with this one. This is not a modelling or related story. This is now for something completely different, and you'll see just how different it is in a moment. I want to talk to you about my old friend Honda. You'll recall, several of you have seen me with my trusty Honda mug. I've alluded to the fact that I have a Honda, and you'll see me with my nice cups of tea and coffee. Honda, the power of dreams, there's my big Honda mug. So you know that I have a Honda, you know that I'm, the fact that I've mentioned it in passing a couple of times. I wouldn't normally talk about things like cars or whatever. This is going to be an exception. We have a bit of a problem with Honda. Honda has become something of a problem child. Power of dreams, more like the power of schemes, or the power of nightmares. Let me explain. First of all, let me give you a little bit of a tour. Bear with me a second. I'm going to give you a little tour of my sort of Honda history. Several of you know from my model making, which nearly everybody knows me for, you'll know that I have produced the McLaren Honda MP46. There it is, very proudly showing it. I nearly got it out on the desk, but I thought I wouldn't today because it was just... I'm so furious I might accidentally damage it in my ranting rage. Anyway, you know that I produced this kit and I was very, very delighted with it. It's the Tamiya kit. However, I also have, within this little, I've got here a rather interesting collection of photos to share with you. So, let me talk about the fact that I don't just simply drive a Honda. My wife and I have got a long history of driving Hondas and been very happy with them. Until now. More on that in a moment or two. So here I'm going to talk about the history. I'm going to zoom you in. You can see a couple of photographs, cars that we've had. Now, this first one, I must explain up front, is a little bit different in as much as that. This is actually my wife's car, not mine. But she had two of them. She got the first one when we first got together, before we got married, which was absolutely identical to the car in the photograph. Apart from its alloy wheels, you wouldn't tell them apart from that. So it's a Honda Accord. The first one she had, I think, was an 05 model. What's this, the 05? 04, 05, 03, 03. Give or take here. 03, 04 model. And it was exactly like this. It was a black Honda Accord Toura estate model. And it had the power operated boot, if I recall correctly. Electric boot, which is very good. Liked it. So I'll zoom you in, you can have a look at this. So try and imagine that this is two cars, not one, which it kind of is. I couldn't find any photos of the original one. The only difference that it had, literally the only difference, is the fact that the wheels were different. It had different alloy wheels. It had smaller ones. This has got the 17 inch or the 18, I can't remember. But the other one had significantly noticeably smaller alloy wheels with a higher tyre profile. But apart from that, they were identical. Black, both of them black, whoops. And both of them in great condition. You can probably tell by the sort of body condition that has got the most incredible reflection in the paintwork. I don't know if that's coming out on the camera. Can you see that? It's reflecting our garden border and fence. Beautiful, like a mirror finish. It was a stunning car. Both of them were. Absolutely beautiful. So we had one of those and then we got another one. So this is over a sort of 4 to 5 year period. Then I got a company car. Well, I had a company car already, but I finally got a Honda Accord, and this is it's a 2008 Accord 2 litre petrol. I didn't have it from you, unfortunately, but this is where things start to sort of go wrong in the Honda story, and the really big problems in the Honda story I'll come to later. But this one. This is the company car. It's like a champagne colour. It was very, very refined, very fast. It was smooth, it was quiet, it was reasonably good on fuel, and I really liked it. But the one thing that was a problem, which you can't see in the photo, was the paintwork. And this is where Honda started to lose their their shine for me, because in about 2007-8 they changed their system, their paint system, and I'm no paint expert, but basically they went from like a 2-pack paint, like a solvent based paint, to this acrylic based. And what you saw with this car, I say I inherited this, I didn't have it from you unfortunately, this one. Most of my company cars I had from you, but not this one. And I inherited it after about 18 months into its life. And the previous owner, who I knew, and I'd met him, and then he left the company, seemed like a good guy, to be honest. A chap called Mick out of Scotland. Nice guy. Seemed to look after the car pretty well. And yet it was peppered with paint chips all over the front area, the front of the nose and the top of the bonnet at the front. And it was like it'd been machine gunned, and I was really puzzled by this. I was speaking as a Honda owner, or my wife's been a Honda owner. 2 Accords, not had any of this, you know. And eventually I came to realise it was this new paint, nothing to do with the owner, it was to do with this new paint. And every time it got a stone chip, instead of just getting a localised small chip, big flakes would drop off. 3 or 4 times the area that you'd expect to come off with a stone chip on the motorway or whatever. So I was a bit disconcerted by this, as you would be. And yeah, so I started to notice that the quality perhaps wasn't the same. Now, quite a lot, I think this is down to a lot of legislation around the world where the paints you're allowed to use did change, but Honda's changed more, and this is the story really about, and this is going to be a developing theme in this video, I think. Honda's changed more, and changed for the worse more. So we also at this time had my wife and we then got a Skoda Superb, and this had got far better paint quality than the Honda, and we'd never had a Honda issue before with its paint. So as I say, we've had 2 of them, very happy. With this one, big drop in quality, and very flaky, brittle, hard paint that seems to flake off at, you know, the merest threat of a stone chip, and great lumps of it would drop off. Very odd, very odd. Anyway, moving forward in the story, I then purchased, about a year later, I then went out and purchased this. The Honda S2000, and this is the very last of the line, because they ended production in 2009. And this is the Honda S2000, and this is called the GT100 edition. Now, the very eagle-eyed amongst you, probably more than, I'm probably being optimistic by saying this, but anybody who's an expert on S2000s might recognise this photograph. The photograph was taken by me, and it's my car, but it actually appeared in the Daily Mail, would you believe, about 4 years ago, so about 2017-18. This photo, I recognised the photo straight away because I took it. Taken quite close to the Alton Park racetrack, actually, at the Millpool, which used to have a beautiful restaurant on the left-hand side, actually, which is now sadly gone and been demolished and replaced by houses. But anyway, my wife and I used to enjoy some lovely meals there. Anyway, this is in this little lay-by, this very beautiful spot where there's a fishing pool. And I mentioned it was, it appeared in the Daily Mail in an article about cars that appreciate in value, and this is one of them. So I got my money back on this car. I didn't make a profit, but I didn't make a loss either. I literally got every penny back I paid for it, and I kept it for about 2 years. And I got a little bit jumpy because there were stories around about these having problems in this final year of production only. Everybody that's listening to this, if you're an S2000 fan or you know anything about Hondas, will be saying, absolute rubbish, what are you talking about? But there were some problems, and it was the clutch release bearing, and it caused major engine problems. And several of them developed very expensive engine rebuild issues, and I got a bit nervous. Mine was fine, I didn't have any symptoms at all. I sold it with a completely clear conscience. I just got nervous about the future, so I let it go, and let it go at the same price I paid for it. But the people who bought this off me, it was a classified ad on eBay. That photo was used in that ad, and I don't know whether that's been taken from there or whether the new owners passed it on to the Daily Mail. But anyway, this is quite a famous picture now because it's actually been used several times in the national press. I should get royalties, but anyway. But anyway, this car, interestingly, didn't seem to have the very flaky paint. It seemed to be okay, but there were just some. You can see that from what I've said, there's some concerns were creeping in around Honda reliability. But it was a very nice car, this one. It was well engineered, and it was obviously not a new design then, and it was from their good era, you know, around the turn of the century. Came out in the late 90s, I think, the S2000, didn't it? So yeah, a very nice machine. I didn't really get on with it. I found, I'm not going to criticise the car, perhaps it's just my personal driving style, but I think on a track it would be absolutely epic, to be honest. But on the road, I think that its lack of torque for overtaking meant that you had to get up to the red line, 9,000 RPM, to get the real torque from the engine. And that's not easy, actually, when you're driving it in a sort of sensible way. No turbo on this, it's normally aspirated 2 litre, developing 240 horsepower, I think it was, thereabouts. Just going from memory. But it was a nice car, good to drive, but I never quite got on with the driving position because I couldn't adjust the steering wheel, and I never quite felt it was right for me. One of those cars, but I loved it as an engineering machine, and I was very keen when I bought it. I just sort of didn't bond with it the way I thought I would, so I sold it on. I only did about, don't think I did 2,000 miles on it. So it was absolutely immaculate, and I sold it on. It also came with it's got the pop-up roof, but it's also got the hard-top roof and a stand for the hard-top roof. So the buyer got all this. If anything, I might have lost £1 or £2 because I actually there was a little dint in the roof, tiny one, and I got that fixed. So actually the buyer got it absolutely premium mint and detailed, which it wasn't quite that good when I picked it up. So it was actually, in some respects, I wouldn't say I lost on it because I didn't lose actual money, but I did do a couple of little jobs and then pass those benefits on to the next buyer. Anyway, the buyer was absolutely delighted. When I was selling this car, it's a funny story, when I was selling the car, they I advertised it and said it's perfect. Stone chips there was 2 or 3 stone chips that were noticeable. I had them all done, and I had it detailed, and it looked absolutely epic. It was properly done, so it was absolutely a premium example of the sort of car you'd want to buy. And I've always prided myself, if there's anything wrong with the car, I will make it clear right up front. And there's very, very seldom that we've ever sold cars that have got faults on them anyway. And this was the case with this. All the 3 little faults it had, I cured all of them. It was perfect. And the buyer, when they came, it was a lady, but her husband was buying it for her. And he rang me up and he said, "Can I trust you?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, go and look on my eBay account." I said, it's not a reference for a car, but it gives you a bit of an idea what I'm like. And I had a perfect score on eBay. Everybody saying how honest I was and how rapidly I dealt with any problems, and everybody's very happy. And then when he came, his wife came with his, I think it was a friend or a relative. He couldn't make it, and then the evening that she got home, when she collected the car, drove it back. They live near Winchester, and he rang me up that evening and he said, "My God, never have I purchased a second-hand car that perfect. It was absolutely," he said, "it's absolutely like brand new. It's like brand new." He said, "I don't understand it. How?" He said, "Thank you," and he was really grateful. He said, "I'm so grateful to you." He said, I just can't believe you because you were making it sound like it was perfect." He said, "But it is." He said, "I'm amazed." And he was effusive on the phone, this gentleman. And I enjoyed that phone call, I did. And I thought, why can't we all be like this? If there's something wrong with it, tell them. If there's nothing wrong with it, boast about it. And I did, and he didn't really believe me, and I can understand that because it's a lot of trust. 19 grand it was. Anyway, I'm sort of going into the story about the S2000 because it's an interesting one, but blow my own trumpet a little bit here. But it's nice that he appreciated my honesty, and he appreciated the fact that this was exceptional, and when he got it, he recognised it, and he did understand that not only had he not been conned, but he'd dropped lucky and got just the right seller of the right vehicle. And it's the OCD in me, I'm afraid. Anyway, he was a very happy customer. So I'll move on from the story. But I had some reservations about Honda because I just got this confidence lift started around this time. So I've had a company car at this point. I've had my own sports car, and I'm just starting to get. So we went away from Honda for a bit, and I had a company car that was a Skoda. My wife got she had a Skoda Superb, and I had the Superb Saloon, and she had the Superb Estate. And we found them to be excellent, and we got very good service from the local Skoda dealer. Anyway, moving forward, I then ended up having a company car. I had another Skoda Superb with a different company actually, and then we decided we didn't need 2 Superbs, so she got the Yeti, far more efficient, lightweight car, but 4-wheel drive. So it's got, and I'm speaking to you now in November, and we've got a lot of ice and snow in where I live, and it's perfect, ideal for these conditions. Just perfect. It's light, and it's sensibly sized. It's got good visibility, great traction, etc. Just what you want in bad weather, really. So it was a good choice to have that. And then I then bought, rather than have another Honda, I got an S2000 Toyota. Start again. I've had the S2000. I got the GT86 Toyota, I mean, which I liked, but it lacked the power of the S2000, which was, it had a bit of grunt, you know, and it didn't have that much. It was about 45 horsepower less. A little bit heavy, I think, as well. So yeah, I liked it, but I didn't really bond with that one either. But anyway, moving forward, we got to towards the end of the decade, and we realised that we didn't have an estate car anymore because I changed jobs again, and I no longer had the estate. So we decided to buy, and this is the next one. We bought this. It's the Honda Civic Toura, the estate version of the Civic, and they actually didn't sell very many of these in the UK. I don't know what the worldwide sales are like, but it was the smallest selling of all the Hondas, I think, in the UK. I personally think it's a great design, very practical, looks good, doesn't look as weird as the Civic, the FN9, I think it is. It looks a lot less weird than the Civic hatchback does. It looks more proportioned and more sensible. And it's very practical, and it's not the most economical car in the world, I've got to be honest. It's a bit, for fuel it's not great. It's petrol engine, but this is its weakness. It's got a 1.5 litre petrol, again no turbo. It's got an automatic gearbox, but it's got paddle shift, and the engine is the weak point. It's a bit thirsty. 40 miles per gallon would be a very, very good run. You won't get much more than 40 miles to the gallon. And it's a bit slow. I don't know how to put this. It's sluggish. It doesn't have much acceleration. In fact, you know, we have the Yeti, and that's like a sports car by comparison. So it's not quite what we expected. And it's funny because we got one or two of the neighbours have said to me in the not too distant past, have said, "Oh, I like your Honda. It's the Type R, isn't it?" And they all think it's like the hot version. And it's called the SR Toura, but it's not the hot version, I can promise you. It's hopeless. But what it is very good for, it's very good on long journeys. It's incredibly quiet. I've never had a quieter car that wasn't, you know, like electric or something. It's the quietest car I've ever had. On the motorway especially, it's very relaxing to drive on long journeys. So it's got good load carrying capacity. It's very quiet. It's very refined. It's just a bit sluggish and a bit thirsty. So it's not got the best engine. But anyway, there we are. But I'm fairly happy with it overall. The only other thing about it was it's this 2015 generation with lots of electronics in it. And when I say electronics, I'm not being a Luddite. It's got a particularly non-intuitive interface with the sort of infotainment system. It's really quite odd, I think, quite strange. So, not sure. It's good. It's the sort of car that you think, well, that's a good. We know that Honda are reliable cars. It's very practical. Good, you know, if you ever go on a long holiday, it's the one to take, really. You can put a couple of bicycles in there if you wanted to. And that brings us to, that's my sort of Honda history. So I've had 1, 2, 3, 4. We've had 4 Hondas. My wife had one as well. She had two. So she's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you could say. And I've basically had 4 with her. So we've got a long history. We're good customers of Honda. Now here we come to the story that I really want to talk about. This car has now developed a problem. Let me zoom in again. So we have got some issues that were not expected. Now normally I look after my cars, again, OCD, really look after them. So when they go for something like an MOT, I will already know what the tyre wear rates are like. I will have checked everything that's obvious, like bulbs and washer bottles, and everything will be ready to go through. And every time with our Hondas, every single Honda has just sailed through. I think there was an advisory on one of them that had a bit of a brake disc wear, but generally we get no advisories and they go straight through with the pass. Now last year I took this in for its MOT with the Honda dealer, and it was then I think 8 years old. And this is where there's a bit of a problem with Honda generally, and I need to, before I go into the specifics of what's wrong and why I'm making this video, just give you a bit of background about Honda generally. So Honda UK have had, well, Honda worldwide have had quite a big slump. Now, I think this all started around 2008 when we had the financial crisis. They've never quite recovered from that. They were at their peak in 08-09 sales-wise in the UK. And I was looking at some figures. I'm not trying to be an expert on this, I'm just telling you what I've read just today. And it was quoting that in the UK, units of cars, 2009, they sold something like 440,000 cars. It's a lot of cars. But they've declined. They've declined a lot. And it's not just the UK. I didn't know this at all. This is complete news to me. I'm not going to quote the world numbers because I haven't got enough of a handle on it. But I can see from some of the videos on YouTube, which I've never seen before today, that there are people talking about Honda reliability, Honda sales slump, how they've collapsed. And I think there's a couple of reasons for it. I don't know what the initiation or the basic causes are. But the reasons are clearly reliability is one, price is another. I think that they've gone down this route of prematurely committing to electric way too soon, like a lot of manufacturers have done. But they seem to have thrown their all in. So I mentioned the Honda Accord. We had two Honda Accords estate version. Then we had the saloon company car. That model was dropped. They didn't develop another product after 2010, I think. I think it was dropped 2010, 2011. Dropped from the range. And there's been no new version. Now that means for company car users, for a saloon, gone. No option anymore in the UK. It's very bizarre. Strange choices. Some of you will recall, some of you may have seen the Netflix recent series about this, the Formula 1 situation. Honda were incredibly dominant. You saw Ayrton Senna's model, his McLaren MP46 there. They were dominant in the 80s with Alain Prost and then Ayrton Senna. And then later, even in the 2000s, they had Mika Hakkinen winning the title twice. So they won 6. They must have won 8 titles off the top of my head I can think about. Then they had in the early 2000s they bought the BAR Honda team from British American Tobacco, and they became a Honda works team. In 2003-2004 they were BAR Honda, and they were taken over completely. I think it was in 2006-7, and then they had sort of 2 years under Honda ownership, and this is when the Power of Dreams and Earth Dreams and all this weird branding started, all this eco branding silliness, you know. There's a lot of that around today, but anyway, I won't get into that. And then they without warning, some of you that follow Formula 1 will know where I'm going with this story. Without warning, they suddenly pulled out of Formula 1 completely, dropping Rubens Barrichello and Jenson Button, 2 excellent drivers, the Formula 1 drivers that they had, basically dropping them completely into the bin with no drive. Ross Brawn was then working for the team, having moved from Ferrari. Nick Fry was there, Jeff Willis was the designer. And these guys were basically out, everybody was out of a job, and the entire team at Brackley near Silverstone, Northamptonshire in the UK, that was it, they were done, out of work. And this was because Honda decided they couldn't afford Formula 1, the crisis of the global financial crash had affected them, and they kind of completely overreacted and just pulled out without warning. And the story goes, of course, that Ross Brawn took on the team for £1. He paid £1, but he had to take on everything, all the liabilities, the overheads, the wages, everything. And he went round to sponsors and capital partners raising money, and he got engines from Mercedes, which meant the car had to be modified, and their 2009 car was already developed and they believed was going to be competitive. Well, when they put the Mercedes engine in it, it was probably even more competitive than they'd hoped. And of course, against all odds, it dominated the first half of the 2009 Formula 1 season. Right up to the British Grand Prix, it was pretty dominant, really. I think it won 8 races, 7, 8 races. Incredible, just in the first half of the season. Crazy. And Button was winning race after race. And if he didn't win, Barrichello would win. And then mid-season, because they were running out of money, they didn't have the big backers. Red Bull caught them up, but they just didn't have time to catch them up completely. And they had this famous double diffuser at the back of the car, which gave them a technical advantage and gave them more downforce, which was quite controversial, but it was very clever what they did actually, and others copied it in the end. But it was too late; the damage was done. They'd already they'd won so many races, including places like Monaco, and I think they won Monaco, and they won Spain, and so on and so forth. Won all these races. And then Button just hung on, even though that they were then getting beaten in the second half of the championship. He hung on, and then he had a good race when he came from further back in Brazil and won the world title. I think he finished 5th, won the world title. A fairy tale come true. And this is all because Honda, and this would have been Honda's ultimate glory. And they threw it away with bad judgment. Anyway, their sales, I mentioned in the UK that they've had a bit of a problem. I was reading that they had 155 or thereabouts, 155 dealerships. They've now got something like 56 left. They've closed them right, left and centre, including my own local one, which was excellent. Even the village I live in, there are actually some staff who work in, or did work in that dealership. Then it changed to a group. I won't name names here, but it was a group that basically were not known for Honda at all, and just jack of all trades. They do Renault, Nissan, Volvo, I think Kia. They do about 5 or 6 brands, and it was just another brand. I took it there for servicing, and they were completely incompetent, I'm afraid, and wasn't impressed at all. And that just left us with one bit further away. And then before you know it, the one that was local that I didn't like closed completely. No longer, not the business, but closed the Honda element of it. No longer doing or servicing Honda. So you only had one. You had to travel now 25, 30 miles to go to the nearest dealer. A nightmare, and the nearest dealer wasn't great. So this brings me to the story of why I'm bitching about them, and why I'm having a bit of a rant. So back toward the present day. So last year I had to take it up to this the dealer in Stoke-on-Trent, and it passed the MOT, no problem as usual. But they claim that they found 2 oil leaks. Now, Hondas are not known for this, and we don't drive this car hard. It's very much the one that gets the kid gloves, and it doesn't get very high miles, and it's never had any issues at all. Suddenly they claim there's a major oil leak between the crankcase and the gearbox, and that there's a secondary oil leak behind. I think the anti-knock sensor has got an oil leak at the back of that as well. And I said, well, how much is this going to cost? And they said it's going to be £1,700. Excuse me, because I need this. I'm not having any coffee today. Now they said that it was leaking oil. No evidence of any oil leaks I've seen whatsoever. So I took it to an independent specialist, who are very much conversant with Hondas, and actually it's probably their number one area of expertise. And I paid them to do a check on it, an independent third-party check. And they took the under tray off, and he called me out. It's all up on the lift, so I can look under the car. And they called me out, and I looked under this engine gearbox, and he says to me, right, Mr. Oxley, do you notice anything? And I looked down at the under tray, and I said, no. And that's the problem, isn't it? And he grinned, he said, yes. There's no drips on the under tray. He said, so I'm not sure what they're talking about, frankly. And then he said, this knock sensor, he said, if you look up here, it's quite inaccessible, so you've got to look right up at the back of the engine with a big torch. And he shone this powerful torch, and you could just see a slight moistening around this seal. But there was no drip anywhere. There was no drip that went down to anywhere. That's evident at all. And he said, I think they are grossly over-exaggerating this. He said, this is not something we'd suggest you had done. He said, what do you think? And I said, well, if I knew I had an oil leak on my drive, I would be getting that fixed immediately, because I wouldn't want it messing the drive up anyway. I said, I don't leave any serious oil leak I'd attend to. So I just didn't really feel it was likely. And he said, we've never had one on one of these engines before. It's very strange. So my confidence in the dealer network was already plummeting. Now this dealer concerned is the one we bought the car off. So you can see my sort of enthusiasm and trust in them has been eradicated already. And that's not, you haven't done the worst part yet. So, just going back to the car there. Fast forward 12 months, and I sort of had a bit of a confidence lift here. And I thought, well, should I go back to them? I thought, no, because they're going to say the same thing again. I know they are, and there just doesn't seem to be any justification. The car's done 45,000 miles. It's very low miles for its age. 9 years old, you know, so it's low, and it doesn't get treated harshly or anything like that. It doesn't get revved or it's not that sort of car. You wouldn't sort of drive it hard. It wouldn't reward you. The Yeti's more sporty. That's the one you drive harder if you were going to. So I took it to an independent garage just for the MOT and service this time. Well, long out of warranty now anyway. And to my astonishment, I got the one thing it did need. It needed new tyres. It was still in its original tyres. So we got a brand new set of premium tyres from Bridgestone, which was the ones recommended for the car. Got that all done in July. And again, checked everything was okay. Everything was working fine. Topped up all the fluids and all that. In it goes for its MOT. And I get a phone call to say it's failed the MOT. And I said, impossible. On what? And he said, I've got bad news. You're not going to like any of this. Reach for another glass of wine. Another drink. So he says, it's nothing that you'd notice. He said it's probably something you haven't noticed, and I'm not sure it's even been doing the fault for long. It's your offside rear shock absorber at the back of the damper. And he said this car has got adaptive dampers, so you've got a soft, medium and hard ride option. It's electrically powered. It's like a solenoid thing. So I said, right, okay. How much is it going to cost for a new one? He said, well, there's no easy way to wrap it up for you. It's going to cost about £400 plus fitting. I said, so that is the bad news then? He said, oh no, that's not the bad news. The bad news is that they cannot source the part. And I said, what do you mean they can't source the part? He said, you know that these are relatively rare. Now, he says this, it's quite funny actually, because where I live, I know he's telling the truth because I don't see many on the road, but just where I live there are actually two others. So it must have been like the centre of the world for these Civic Touras being sold. There's a white one, there's a blue one, and there's my black one. And basically, Siri. And basically, anywhere else, I never see them. So he said, well, they're actually there was a low production run on these. He said that's the first one we've had in. He said, but they have these adaptive dampers, and it's a very thin thing. It looks like a bicycle pump. It's a really narrow damper, and it has like a wire out a tube out the top of it going to this solenoid, and then this electrical connection for the adjustable dampers. You press a button to operate it. Anyway, he said, well, can't get it. He said, I've tried to get you the non-Honda version, you know, but they're all saying they don't do it. It's only the OEM Honda genuine part. So I said, oh God, right, how much is it? It's going to cost any more? He said, no, you don't understand. They haven't got any. Honda have got no parts. And I said, what do you mean they've got no parts? Really? Really? Anyway, of course I've had to check up on this, and I didn't disbelieve him, but he said, I don't know when you're going to get it. I said, don't be ridiculous. This car is taxed, it's insured, and it's you know, been serviced. I can't just be off the road until they decide to come up to the party. So, well, there's nothing I can do. It's in the realms of Honda. So, now we come to the real crux of the matter. So I've contacted Honda to the dealer network, and of course he's right in what he's saying. There is no stock. There was a lady actually who was on one of the forums, and she's got the exact same car, same problem, somewhere elsewhere in England. And she is in the same boat as me, and she's been told end of January. And this is what I've now independently found out is correct. They're saying maybe the end of January. So this is actually 3 months I'm going to be off the road with my car. No car. The MOT has expired. I can't drive it legally apart from to go to another MOT. So I said to the motor garage that I'd done the work, and I said, well, can I not change to a standard damper? He said, well, you could, but it would require a different mounting, and you won't be able to go back again. We'd have to make it a permanent change, which would probably affect the value of the car, which you don't want to do really. I would start messing about. It's kind of modified car then. You'd have to declare it to your insurance company and all sorts of stuff. So this is an absolute nightmare. Now, it gets worse, because when I contacted Honda themselves, initially there was a lot, oh, we'll get back to you and da da da. Now, I've now had several emails from them and phone calls. And I have to say I'm very dissatisfied with the response. And if you're watching Honda, this is doing you no credit whatsoever. And it doesn't matter, you know, at the end of the day, it's not... I was told by the garage, they actually said, well, and I was told this by the Chester dealer as well, Honda dealer, official. He said, well, it's not just us, there's one or two other manufacturers having problems with parts. For example, Mercedes with some of their electronics that are coming from the Ukraine, which are really obviously getting major delays and problems. And I said, yeah, but... He said, yeah, it's things like the sat-nav. And I said, yeah, but that's not as important as this, is it? This is something that keeps the car off the road. It is a safety-related component. We're not talking about sat-navs or infotainment here, window winders. We're talking about being able to actually drive the car on the road. This is like steering, brakes, it's suspension, it's critical safety components. And apparently, when I contacted Honda, they then told me, I'm just seeing if I can find the email, the last one, but they actually told me that the reason there is a problem is that their supply chain logistics team decided to change suppliers of this component. Now, it's actually a damper that's actually made for them by Sachs in Germany. It's not coming from Japan. But apparently Sachs, I think it's Sachs, that's changed the supplier of one of the components and has failed them, and they can't get this component. And it looks like they only do a production run of these components. You couldn't make this up, could you? Once a year they do it. Once a year, which is disgracefully useless. This is a Honda Civic. It's not something rare. It's not a classic car or a low production run, you know, specialist car. It might be a low production run by their standards, but this is a bog standard car. And why it ever had adaptive dampers on it in the first place? Everybody keeps saying, well, it's not a track car. Why did they do that for? Very strange. Anyway, I'll give you the gist of what they've said. The last email, which kind of sums it up, I said to him, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go on YouTube. If you don't come up with something, if you cannot give me a date even, and I'm going to be off the road for 3 months, that's a huge cost to me. How do I get to work? How do I go shopping, going to the doctors, hospitals, anything like that? Travelling to, you know, Christmas? No, can't do any of those things. Go see relatives at Christmas. Friends? No, can't do anything. I've got no car. This is outrageous. You know, somebody's bought a quality Honda product, I thought they were, from a Honda dealer, and this is the best you can do? Oh, well, maybe you should ask the dealer, if the local dealer, if they'll give you a hire car. And I said, why would they do that? You're the ones that have failed here. It's not the dealer that's failed. It's Honda Logistics. So he says that basically, yes, they can't get any more. They can't give me a definite date. And his email reads, at Honda, we pride ourselves on delivering reliable, high-quality vehicles and supporting our customers throughout their ownership experience. Really? I appreciate I was unable to provide you with the outcome you may have anticipated. No, deserved is the word he's looking for. However, if you would like to take the matter further, I'd recommend you contacting the Motor Ombudsman for their advice and support, which I will be doing. I will do that, and I'll give you an update. Honda UK is one of the Ombudsman's subscribers, blah, 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 blah. A load of blah, blah, blah. And he kept saying in the... I won't name this lad because it's probably not fair. It's not his fault. But he kept saying in the phone call, I realise this is not an ideal outcome. And I said, mate, ideal and this scenario, don't use them in the same context. It's the exact opposite of ideal. I said, this is appalling. I said, so you've now got... I said, I know there are 2 or 3 other people that are off the road the same way as I am until you can supply a part. I said, you have a duty of care, especially on a safety-related item like this. Think about it if the MOT wasn't due. You'd be driving around in a car with defective rear shockers. That's dangerous. You know, if the MOT had already been passed and then it went wrong a month later, this is really unsafe. It's dangerous. And I think they are being very negligent here. And the fact they've changed suppliers and done all this, well, lots of manufacturers change suppliers. sometimes through necessity, but you always have a plan B. You cannot just shrug your shoulders and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, well, you're off the road until eventually our useless supplier that we have obviously neglectfully not done due diligence on, until they can get their act together, you're off the road. And they don't give a toss, you know. And I said to him, I said, if you were offering me something like a courtesy car, or I don't know, to buy the car back and let me get another car, I said, you're offering me nothing. You're offering your customers nothing in terms of support, just a few warm words, which are worth nothing. This is appalling. I mean, this company has fallen and crashed. And when I looked at the actual numbers today, before I did the video, yeah, it's astonishing actually. So they were selling 400, and this is just unbelievable. They were selling 440,000 cars, and then this year they think it only in the UK it'll only be 43,000. So they've lost 90% of their sales in the UK. I knew they were struggling, but I didn't know it was that bad. And of course they closed the factory in Swindon, which I think this car was built in Swindon with the rest of the Civics. So it was actually a British built car. How absolutely incredible. I mean, they suffered more than most during the COVID crisis, but if you go now on YouTube when you finish watching my video, go and have a look at the other comments about put in Honda sales or Honda reliability and see what comes up. You'll be amazed. Between this very period that I'm having the problem, here's a car that we've got that looks brand new. Even the motor dealer garage said it's a great car, and the dealership keeps ringing me up and saying, would you like to sell your car? And I feel like saying, now if they ring me I'm going to say, yes, I would like to sell it, yes please. I mean, you just can't have faith in them. The other problem is that this damper is obviously a little bit vulnerable, so I'm probably thinking we're going to have to replace both the rear dampers, because if we don't, we could be in exactly the same situation in a year's time if the other one goes, you know. And you can't be off the road, and you might grab them when you can, sort of thing. But this is ridiculous, a farce. I've never encountered this. I've been driving for over 40 years since I passed my test, and I have never encountered a situation like this. This is astonishing that any manufacturer thinks that it's reasonable to do this. So I am going to contact the Ombudsman. I may contact the national press, Daily Mail or something loud and shouty, you know. And probably go on Pistonheads and talk about it on Pistonheads as well as here on my channel. But it's not just that, oh, it's very inconvenient. It's not like, you can't sell people a car and then not have the basic parts like brakes, steering, you know, the safety items and suspension to replace it, and not even be able to tell them when it will be expected in stock, which they're not managing at the moment. So, not a very happy camper. Whoops. Go away, Siri. Goodbye, Siri.
Okay.
Yes. I don't like Siri. So basically what we have got now, I've actually got a picture there. Zoom in. This is the, I won't go into too much detail, but this is the offending part, which I mentioned is made in Germany actually, and it's made by Sachs. There it is. This one on here. So I say it looks like a little bicycle pump. It's very small. Absolutely ridiculous. And there you go. So you've got me basically tearing my hair out if I did have any hair left. Absolutely ridiculous. And that is a total disaster. Complete failure of customer care by Honda UK. I mean, I don't know why they think that's even remotely reasonable for customers to then be completely marooned, especially when they're not giving you any idea of a date when they're going to have the problem sorted. And I'm left in the dark, so I've got a car that's taxed, insured, serviced, lots of money put into it, and is completely off the road at the moment and can't legally drive it. And it looks like a brand new car. This car has been well looked after. It's mint, under the bonnet, it looks great everywhere, new tyres, beautiful alloy wheels, not been curbed ever. It looks like a new car, and it's failed because of a bad reliability. And this is the thing, you know, I mentioned about the oil leaks. This is new. This is not something Honda have had before. And reading and watching some of these YouTube videos today, it's quite obvious that people are saying that from 2015 onwards is when they went into this slump. And there's no sign they're getting out of it either. They're hoping that the electric vehicles will pull them out of it. Well, I wouldn't bank on that, Honda. I just can't understand it, because I'm I've always been such a pro Honda customer, so loyal and faithful, great confidence in them. My faith has been destroyed by this. It's absolutely appalling. How can you let people down that badly? It's disgusting, really. It's disgusting. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. It's to quote Honda UK, it's not an ideal situation. You're joking, yeah? Don't use. I said to him, don't use that language, please. Don't use the word ideal. This is appalling. It's utterly negligent, and it's totally unacceptable. And it would be for any manufacturer, major manufacturer, especially with a car. You know, somebody was saying in one of the videos about the customer reliability ratings of Honda, generally worldwide. And in America, I think they said it dropped from being the #1 most reliable manufacturer to 15th. And I think I saw UK numbers where it had gone down into the late 20s, like 29th or something. They've gone from being one of the best, most reliable manufacturers to one of the worst. So it's unusual. Don't understand it. Somebody has really taken their eye off the ball. I don't know what it is. And there's rumours that Honda may not survive. I don't wish that on them. Don't. I want them to get their act together is all I want. And get me my rear damper. But it doesn't fill you with confidence. And there's talk about Japan has got the biggest debt in the world and they're struggling to be competitive and blah 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 blah. Well, I don't know how this rot really started. I don't know what the genesis of it was. We know when it happened. We know it was after the financial crash. But I think that bad decisions were made and they went to electric far too soon. You know, my local dealership, we walked in there a couple of times around about 2012, 2014. And they had one of these in. Didn't buy it just then. I bought it in 2020. Had it for 5 years. 5 years. Was it 2019? I'll lose track now. So it's about 5 years old. 5 years with us, and it's obviously 9 years old overall. So, yeah, not good. And since then, we've gone in, and there's no cars we really like. And then, of course, they shut down, as I mentioned. So they just stopped having cars we wanted, and they've got all these weird electric things that are really expensive, very impractical, not good for long journeys. They've just lost their way, and they've walked away from their customers is what they've done. And they had such a good customer base, you know. And Toyota have remained pretty solid in the same, having the same sort of customer base. They seem to have hung on to their understanding what their customers want and understanding what the customer base represents, really. Anyway, there we go. A bit of a rant and rave, but I think I've got good reason to be pretty cross with them. My wife is furious. She wants to just get rid of the car. Which you can understand, really, you know, because it just doesn't fill you with confidence. Here we've got a car that seems to have lots of reliability issues, despite being very pampered and very well looked after and properly serviced now, having no expense spared, and is going wrong because Honda have not done a very good job. And this is not what Honda used to be. They were always bulletproof, excellent cars. You knew it was going to get through its MOT. It wasn't going to give you problems. As long as you serviced them and looked after them properly, they were never give you any moments lack of confidence or worry. But that's not true anymore, I'm afraid. So what can you say? But I think that they've got a case to answer. I think that Honda UK's complete lack of offering anything in a situation, it's unique to me. I've never seen this before with any car manufacturer, that they can't get parts for their own cars, especially when it's such a fundamental important part of the car and it's not safe to drive it or legal to drive it. I mean, you couldn't drive it without an MOT, you'd be arrested anyway, it'd be illegal, and you'd void your insurance anyway. So it's completely illegal and dangerous to drive it in that condition. That's not good enough. You know, they need to provide that part. It wouldn't matter if I was a millionaire. I couldn't get it fixed. When you think about it like that, isn't that just ridiculous? It's just crazy. So I'm afraid you're not going to be seeing my Honda Power and Dreams anymore. The Power and Nightmares, I should rewrite it and scrub it out and put the Power and Nightmares, because that's what it's turning into. And I'm very disappointed. It's very disappointing. They don't deserve to survive if that's the best way they're going to treat their customers. Anybody watching this video now, you know, I can look them in the eye. This is 100% true what I've told you, everything. How could I ever recommend a Honda product to them? How would they ever trust them after hearing this? I'll never trust them the same way again. And I've always had complete faith in Honda. And it's gone. It's appalling. Disgraceful. Anyway, thought I'd share that rather sad and grim story with you. I said to the chap on the phone, I said, we've had, my wife and I between us, I said we've had, what did I say she'd had? I've had 4, and she's had 2 more, so I've had 6 between us. Won't be a 7th. There won't be a 7th. They're just the fact that they've withdrawn the dealers as well. It's completely inconvenient to deal with now. Not local, not sensible. They just don't seem to care, quite frankly. They just don't seem to care about the customer. So the customer's not going to buy from a company that behaves like that and treats them so badly. Sorry, but that's the way it is. Anyway, thank you for watching. Sorry it was a bit of a strange one today, a bit of a rant. Well-deserved rant. I'm going to need another drink. Never have I felt so let down by any company, I don't think, really. I mean, we're talking about very expensive products here. We're not talking about model kits. We're talking about things that cost, you know, a year's wages. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Hope you give me a thumbs up. Give us a 10 out of 10. And see, I'd be interested if anybody else has ever had a similar experience, or if you've had problems with Honda or indeed other manufacturers like this, where they seem impotent and completely unable to sort of resolve their own problem. You know, they've made a stupid decision, cutting corners to cut costs, and the customer is the one that has to pick up the broken crockery. It's completely unacceptable, disgusting. Anyway, I'd love to hear your views. Don't forget to comment. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And that's it from me for now. Thanks for watching. Hope you thought it was interesting, if nothing else. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.